Hello and welcome to the Naked Expat channel. I was reading the other day a fascinating psychology paper about the difference in cultures between Western cultures and Eastern cultures and their values. I'll come on to that in a minute. I also read online a fascinating study about property ownership in Japan, which irrespective of whether you live in Japan or you're an expat or whatever, is actually quite fascinating because it just highlights that one cannot assume certain things are necessarily logical. For example, I never knew that 20% of the land in Japan, that's about the size of Denmark, is nobody knows who owns it. Because rather interestingly enough, in Japan, it's not compulsory to register your land ownership. And about 20% of all of the land in Japan, nobody knows who owns it. It is owned by people that have documentation, but it's not been registered. And this created a huge problem for the Japanese government a few years ago because they wanted to build a new expressway out of Tokyo, which was all going fine. You know, just like in the UK, if they wanted to build something, they'll go via, if you don't sell your land back to the government, they'll do a compulsory purchase. They'll force you to sell it because the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few, or the one. I think Spock said that in Star Trek, didn't he? But anyway, it's a similar thing. Now, they had, all was going well, apart from one parcel of land in Japan, and they desperately needed to go through this parcel of land with the new expressway leading out of Tokyo. And because of the crazy land ownership and non-registration of land in Japan, they had to track down, for this one small parcel of land, they had to track down 143 heirs or potential heirs to this land. And it held up the expressway, the highway development, for a very, very long time. Why is that? Well, it's not really that important for expats, but it just highlights that your culture might be very straightforward and logical and everything sort of makes sense. And then you become an expat and you think, what the, some things are you think are absolutely ludicrous. But there we go. You pay your money, you take your chance. But I think it's very interesting because it just highlights how different countries have different rules, and you've got to try and fit in. Always expect in your expat journey to be thrown a few curveballs. And again, fail to plan, plan to fail. Now, moving on to this psychology paper that I read, which was absolutely fascinating. And this is very relevant for expats because again, it highlights the very different attitudes and cultures depending on whereabouts in the world you are. Now, this paper studied the key differences between Eastern values and Western values, Eastern cultures and Western cultures, and how people act within those cultures. And they did a very wide-ranging survey in order to emphasize the differences. The first example that this paper gave was a question that they gave Westerners and Easterners to answer. And they were given 3 words. And it was basically train, bus, track. And they were asked to put 2 together. What were the similarities and what were the differences between train, bus, track? Now, Westerners, in most instances, acted on a category basis. So they categorized. So they put train and bus together. Whereas Easterners within the survey put train and track together because they operate on a more relationship-based philosophy. And this highlighted the fact that in Western cultures, the individualist dominates, and in Eastern cultures, the collective dominates. In Eastern cultures, everything is far more relational. The next example they gave, again very fascinating, was when they asked Easterners and Westerners a question and they basically said, tell me about yourself. A bit like an elevator pitch, but tell me about yourself. And Westerners generally replied with, oh, I'm a lawyer, I'm an engineer, I'm a military person, I'm a policeman, or whatever. In Eastern cultures, the vast majority reply with, oh, I'm the brother and sister of so-and-so, or I'm related to so-and-so. My boss is so-and-so, and I'm a friend of so-and-so. And again, this further emphasised that in Eastern cultures, what's more important, it's very much more relational, whom you related to. Whereas, of course, in Western cultures, I'm a lawyer, I'm a policeman, is very, very individualistic. Years ago, psychologists thought that this had more to do with sort of Buddhism and it was more spiritual. But then a very, very wide-reaching survey was done that looked at the differences on the border between Russia and China. And they looked at the grain farmers in Russia and the rice farmers in China that were right on the border. So they were almost like neighbouring villages, but one part was Russia, one part was China. And it highlighted that with regards to the Russian grain farmers, all of the farmers worked individually on their farms, and it was very, very individualistic what they did. Whereas the Chinese rice farmers acted as a cooperative. So they all teamed together within their rice farms and acted as a cooperative and harvested together and helped each other out. And it was vastly different, and yet kilometres wise, they were virtually next door to each other. But the mindset between East and West was completely different. It was very much more selfish, dog eat dog, with the Russian farmers, grain farmers, and very much more cooperative with regards to the Chinese rice farmers. And that was fascinating how even when they were in close proximity, the different attitude between East and West was just so markedly different. This psychology paper finished with another very interesting study that they conducted when they monitored the behaviour of Westerners and Easterners in a Starbucks. And what they did was they monitored the Easterners and Westerners when they picked up their coffee after they'd ordered it and paid for it, when they picked up their coffee from the service counter and they walked towards free tables. In the survey, they messed up the chairs and tables so there wasn't a clear route. Now, when the Westerners picked up their coffee and they walked towards the free tables to sit down, they just walked around the tables. They walked around the chairs until they found a free table and sat down. So it was a case of like dodgems. It was almost like an assault course. The Easterners' behaviour was markedly different. Now, again, I know there's always exceptions to the rule, but in the vast majority of cases, when the Easterners picked up their coffee and they walked towards free tables and there were chairs in the way, they moved the chairs under the various tables and then went to sit down in order to make the way somewhat more clearer for anybody following them. And I know there's always exceptions to the rule, but it was markedly different. The behaviour between the Westerners who just dodged, so they were more individualistic, perhaps you could say more self-centred, than generally the Easterners who moved chairs and parked them back under tables to make it easier for everybody else that followed them. So that was very interesting as well. I've always been interested in psychology, and this psychology paper really highlighted the differences between Easterners and Westerners. And I thought it'd be, you know what, that would be good for my YouTube channel to just talk about that, because us as expats, predominantly from Westerners coming East, you've got to accept that the way of life and the different way of doing things is going to sometimes frustrate you. And it's very different, because we can be very, very different, even though some Easterners are beginning to express themselves in more Western ways, whereas before they were perhaps a little bit more conservative. Things are changing. Some things are becoming a bit more sort of homogenous, but there are still clear differentiations between East and West and cultures, and you've got to accept that, certainly as a Westerner, because we can get so easily frustrated when you come East, because things can be vastly different. Because things are so vastly different between East and West, I do think it's worth mentioning, although I'm in fear of stating the damn obvious, but I think it's worth mentioning that if you're as an individual, as an expat, you're a bit busted already, then really, if you've got any sort of psychological issues or health issues or anything, your mindset is not really that positive and you are very much, the glass is half empty, not half full, then I really do think it's in your best interest to fix yourself before you become an expat. I really do, because I think otherwise, if you're a bit busted up there before you become an expat, when you do become an expat and move into a different culture, you're going to find things just so incredibly frustrating. You're not going to enjoy yourself. You're going to feel like you're walking under a constant dark cloud all of the time. You're going to be miserable. So if you've got any issues, although difficult, I would say try and reconciliate with yourself in your head all of your differences, or the vast majority of your differences, before you become an expat. So you can start again with a clean slate as best as possible. I can remember one of the differences. I actually remembered that in Thailand, for example, it's very rude to sit like this and have your foot pointing towards somebody if there's somebody over there in the direction of where you're pointing your foot, because your feet are considered very, very dirty. And therefore, by putting your foot like this and pointing it towards somebody in a restaurant or a coffee shop, wherever, it's considered very, very insulting to show the bottom of your foot in Thailand. Now, funnily enough, I'd read about this, and I was in a coffee shop in Pattaya on Soi Buakhao. And no, I wasn't. I was on Third Road. And I was in this coffee shop having a cup of coffee, and there was a Thai couple sat 2 tables away from me. And although it had air conditioning on, and I think I was doing a little bit of work on my laptop at the time, and I just happened to naturally do this just to change my body position a little bit, and I pointed my foot towards them, and I looked in my peripheral vision, and the Thai guy looked towards me, and so I immediately put my foot down and went like this, like that, and he just acknowledged me and sort of like said thank you. He might have waylaid me actually. And I didn't think anything else of it. When I in Thailand, you can order, and you can get like a little check bin, and you. When I went to pay for my coffee, the lady said, "Oh, this Thai couple had left." But when they left, he'd paid for my coffee, because I think he really appreciated the fact that I recognised his culture, in that what I did could have been deemed to be potentially rude. But I acknowledged what I did and moved my foot down. And he must have been quite touched by that, because when I went to buy my coffee, the lady said, "Oh, sorry, sir, it's been paid. The gentleman paid for it." Now, he didn't want any backslapping or anything like that. Him and his partner went to pay their bill, and obviously bought my coffee, and they left. They didn't want it. They didn't want any thanks or anything like that. And I was thinking, well, why did he do that? And the lady in the counter said, "Oh, the man just thought, the man said, 'Thank you, you're a very nice man.'" And I thought it was to do with my foot, putting my foot down. So it was just an experience that I had I thought I'd share with you, because I thought it was very, very nice. And again, it's about respecting different cultures. Again, recognising different cultures is, I haven't got a business card to hand, but in Japan, for example, now, normally when I was in business, I would say, "Oh, hi, my name's Andrew, and there's my card." And I'd hand somebody my card like that, and they would just simply take my card. "Oh, thank you for that." Or we exchange business cards. And it wasn't very ceremonial. "There's my card, here's mine," etc., etc. But in Japan, that would be incredibly insulting. Because in Japan, a bit like the Japanese tea ceremonies, there's a way to do things and a way absolutely not to do things. So again, is it important for expats? You're not going to be handing out businesses in Japan, probably, business cards in Japan. Well, it is important, because it just emphasises difference in cultures, and you can really fuck up if you don't have any respect for the country that you're going to. For example, when you hand over a business card in Japan, you don't put your thumb actually on the card. You present it holding its sides like this. And it's taken like that with a bow. And you bow at equal level to the person you're bowing with eye contact. And if he is deemed to be more superior than you'll bow slightly lower. And you'll present your card like this, and you'll take the card like that. And anything else is considered extremely rude. So again, it's just worth pointing out, because there's a difference in cultures. Another thing I thought I would mention is if you're living in the Philippines, it's always very, very prudent to get to know your local barangay captain. Now, your local barangay is like your local village, your local district. If there are any disputes, neighbourly disputes or anything like that, somebody's got a rooster that's going on 24/7, annoying you, or they're burning leaves, which they believe to keep away the mosquitoes, but they're doing it every morning and you're getting your fresh laundry ruined because it's all covered in smoke. Whatever it is, whatever it's, any sort of local municipal dispute is generally handled on a barangay level, on a local village level. As an expat, you can do a lot worse than going down to finding out where your local barangay hall is, introducing yourself and getting to know the barangay captain and the barangay team, because they're incredibly useful. You may well need the barangay hall if you needed to prove your residency for immigration or anything like that. They might want a certificate from the barangay. And you can go down there. Pop down there every now and again with a box of donuts or something, as I've done before, and say, oh, thank you. I had a dispute with one of the neighbours in a different street, and he was wandering around the street with a baseball bat, this Filipino. And I was very intimidated. Now, as a foreigner, you can't have any violence against anybody, or otherwise you'll be deemed to be undesirable and you could be deported. So you have to be very careful. You've got to sort of bite your lip. But you can go down to the barangay captain and make a report, and they can sort things out. And they can actually go and tick somebody off and say, oh, you can't be walking around the streets with a baseball bat. So definitely worth knowing. The barangay captains can be worth their weight in gold. Barangay captains were also incredibly helpful when there was COVID, because there were people that you could liaise with. And whether or not you were vaccine or anti-vaxxers or whatever, that's almost irrelevant. The key thing is the barangay captains are sort of the hub of the local community. So introduce yourself and get to be known and be friendly. Then if you ever need their help or their intervention with a rowdy neighbour or something, a lot of barangays have like a curfew at 10 p.m. So if you've got kids running the street after 10 p.m, you can't deal with anything yourself directly as a foreigner. You just can't, because you're just going to be opening up a can of worms. And certainly in the vast majority of Asian countries, whereas it's acceptable to raise your voice in the West to sort of get your point across, if somebody's being a complete dick, you're going to raise your voice and tell them what you think of them. You can't do that in Asia. Raising your voice gets you absolutely nowhere. You'll look then to be the aggressor, when actually you're not. You're just raising your voice because you're not being understood, or you're very frustrated. There's absolutely no point. You're literally going around in circles. You are getting yourself nowhere fast. Best thing you can do, keep your mouth shut, go to the barangay captain and explain to them what your issue is, what your beef is, whether you've got a problem, and let them sort it out. And they're generally very, very independent, and they're very discreet. So they don't have to go and tell anybody or any of your neighbours who complained. So you're taking yourself out of the loop in a lot of instances, because if you go starting complaining directly to neighbours, etc., you're going to end up with a target on your back. And believe you me, in any country in Asia as a foreigner, your life is worth jack shit, and you can quite easily be made to disappear. I'm not being over dramatic. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of instances of foreigners disappearing or having unfortunate accidents, accidentally getting drunk and falling off a balcony, accidentally coming off their motorcycle, accidentally falling in front of a bullet. It does happen. And believe you me, you've got absolutely no chance. If you've bought somewhere, another reason why you should rent and not buy, because your local neighbourhood can change, and it not necessarily change for the better. My subdivision, for example, I don't know whether or not somebody was watching my YouTube channel a few weeks ago when I was saying why expats should rent and not buy, and all the issues with regards Airbnb. Surprise, surprise, the beginning of this week, there's a great big notice board out by the security gate, the top and bottom security gate, saying Airbnb is not allowed in this subdivision. Please report any activity. Because, of course, Airbnb people will come in for the weekend, create absolute chaos. They don't give a fuck because they don't live here, upset the neighbours, and by Monday they've buggered off. And it's hellishly difficult. So, again, if your barangay, if your area, your neighbours, things start turning for the worst, if you rent, you can always leave. But if you've bought somewhere and you've got a target on your back because you've upset one of the neighbours, or they've just taken a distinct dislike to you, or they don't believe that as a nosy foreigner you got any rights whatsoever. So they'll purposely wait for you to put your laundry out before they start burning leaves, just to wind you up, knowing that you can't really do a lot about it, and they'll make your life a misery. And if you've bought somewhere, you're not going to be able to sell. Very, very difficult to sell property. Very easy to buy property and invest lots and lots and lots of money. Not so easy to sell property. And it takes a long, long time. And whilst you're stuck in your property, your life's going to be miserable because you're not happy. I've mentioned on other videos briefly about the importance of using a VPN or virtual private network for two reasons. One, if you're British, you can log in and watch BBC iPlayer, Channel 4 and everything else. Two, you can watch UK Netflix rather than Philippines Netflix. And then when you go through the Netflix menu, you'll see top 10 movies in the UK rather than top 10 movies in the Philippines, half of which will probably be Korean, because Filipinos love watching Korean movies. So it's very, very different. Of course, if you're American, you can access Netflix America, for example. So those are sort of leisurely benefits. From a security point of view, it's virtually vital, especially if you're using a phone or an iPad or a laptop in places like Starbucks or one of the SMs, anywhere you got free Wi-Fi, or you go to the gym and you got my gym, for example, Anytime Fitness has got free Wi-Fi. But you don't want to be piggybacking their free Wi-Fi directly onto your phone or your laptops or your iPads or your tablets, etc. You don't want to be doing that because hackers can quite easily hack that system. You really shouldn't be doing it. You should be connected to the internet. Unless you're at home and you know your Wi-Fi network is safe, you should always be connecting to the internet, especially abroad, via a VPN. I'll put a link in the description for NordVPN. I've had NordVPN I'm in my 10th year now. I buy a 3-year subscription. Cost me about $350, $400 for the 3 years. And I wouldn't be without it. I use people say, oh, NordVPN or ExpressVPN, NordVPN or ExpressVPN. Well, I'm British and I basically deal in straightforward, no nonsense, basic advice. And that is, when people say NordVPN or ExpressVPN, easy decision for me, NordVPN. Why? They're both good, but why? NordVPN got more servers in the UK. So you've got more places to connect. You've got Edinburgh, Glasgow, Manchester, London, Ireland, etc. You've got so many more servers with NordVPN than you have with ExpressVPN. And if everybody's joining up and using a VPN, you want as many servers in that country as possible. And NordVPN have certainly stolen the march on other companies like ExpressVPN. I've renewed my NordVPN subscription 3 times over 9 years. I've had 3 years, 3 years, 3 years. I'm in my 10th year now, and I would not be without it. Guys, if you take your expat journey seriously enough, doesn't matter whether you're British or American or Australian, doesn't matter where you're going, in Europe, Middle East or Asia, or the States or Australia, doesn't matter. When you're connecting public Wi-Fi, you are seriously at risk of being hacked. So if you want to save your ass and save you a considerable amount of heartache and potentially massive amount of financial fraud, especially if people get hold of your personal details and start taking out credit cards and loans in your name, or hacking your system and extorting money out of you because they've had a denial of service attack on your computer and everything else, you're in the shit. So best to avoid it altogether by going via a VPN. There's a link in the description for that. Whilst I'm talking about technology a little bit with a VPN, a lot of guys, when they want to watch, say, BBC iPlayer and everything else, they've got a smart TV. I've got a smart TV with an Amazon Fire Stick. If you haven't got a smart TV, but you've got a TV with a HDMI socket, you can turn your basic flat screen TV into a smart TV just simply by plugging an Amazon Fire Stick into your HDMI socket on your TV. The other advantage of using an Amazon Fire Stick is it works on 5G. Now, a lot of TVs, including my 3-year-old Samsung TV, it picks up 2.4G Wi-Fi signal from my broadband Wi-Fi router and Wi-Fi signal. It can't pick up 5G. But the Amazon Fire Stick that's plugged into it can. So if I want to watch something through the TV, like my Formula 1 with beIN Sports, that's an app that's added to the TV. I switch to 2.4 and my TV picks up my Wi-Fi signal. But for everything else, I go via the Amazon Fire Stick plugged into the side of the TV. I'm streaming with 5, which is obviously much more efficient than 2.4. Now, why am I mentioning Amazon Fire Sticks? Well, if you've got Amazon Fire Sticks, a lot of people said, oh yeah, but I can buy Amazon Fire Sticks with Lazada or Shopee in the Philippines, or other online shopping providers in Thailand or wherever you are. Yes, you can. But do bear in mind that the vast majority of them are counterfeit. They're fake. And they will either blow up, catch fire, start melting, or they won't last you anything more than about a year or so. The vast majority of them are counterfeit. And some of them are good counterfeits, so they will work maybe for a couple of years, but eventually they will break down. They will melt, they might even catch fire. The best thing you can possibly do is buy your Amazon Fire Stick, surprise, surprise, through Amazon. I've got a link in the description. You can go onto Amazon and buy it. There are 2 types of Fire Sticks that you can get 4K. You can get a standard 4K Fire Stick, or you can get what's known as an international version, which has got a couple of extra buttons on it, like Netflix example. They've both got the same speed, functionality and storage on them. If you're in the UK or in America or Australia, you can buy direct on your Amazon stores and you'll get the standard version, which, yes, you can put in your suitcase, you can bring to the Philippines or Thailand, stick it in and it's going to work. It's not regional restricted. If you're in Thailand or the Philippines already, somewhere abroad, and you've still got Amazon in the UK or America, etc., you can order the international version. It's slightly more expensive. You do get a few more buttons on the remote, for example, but they're pretty similar. But whatever you do, well, if you follow my link in the description, you'll see what I mean, and you can see the international version of the Amazon Fire Stick. But whatever you do, buy it from Amazon. All of the other suppliers, a lot of them are counterfeit, even if they say they're not. I've seen counterfeit Amazon Fire Sticks for sale in the electronic department stores in SM in the Philippines, and I've seen counterfeit ones in Thailand, and they're pretty convincing because they got all the boxes and everything else, but they're fake and you could have issues in the future. So if in doubt, buy via Amazon. They're not that expensive, $60 or whatever, $80 for the international version. They're not expensive. Do yourself a favor and buy direct from Amazon. And finally, if you're in Thailand or Philippines, wherever, you might have a maid, and for not the reasons you're thinking of. In Philippines, for example, they're called yayas, and they're basically domestic workers. Some are live-in, some are live-out. Generally, it's better to have a live-in maid, because if they live out, there's always an excuse. They're caught in traffic, they're late, they can't make it, the child's sick or whatever. There's always some bullshit excuse, and it's a nightmare. If they're living in, you're in control. Be very, very careful. You're extremely vulnerable if you're a single expat. It's probably better not to have a yaya, not to have domestic help, because they can steal your money. If you've got a Filipino partner or a Thai partner or whatever, then that might be different. And they can certainly hire and fire, but not you. As a single foreigner, you're incredibly vulnerable if you have domestic help. They can rob from you, they can make accusations for you, they can say that you got raped, they were raped by you, touched by you inappropriately, etc., etc. You need to go through all the hoops in the Philippines with proper employment contracts and SSS, like national insurance payments, etc., and have their healthcare taken care of. You have to provide like 13 months salary, not 12 months, to get extra month for free over the Christmas period. There's lots of rules and regulations. Guys, it's just not worth it. If you've got a Thai or Filipino or Malaysian partner, let them deal with it. If you're on your own as an expat, don't even bother. Get off your fat lazy ass, take your laundry down to get cleaned, or learn how to wash your own clothes. Same with cooking and cleaning. Do it yourself, or get somebody in on a daily basis from a cleaning company. Do not have a yaya or a live-in maid, because chances are if you have a few beers and you're feeling a little bit frisky, you're going to want to have a turn on it. Not a good idea, mate. And as I've said, even if you don't, they might want to. And if you turn them down to save face, they could go and report you. And what leg have you got to stand on? You can't have a CCTV in their bedroom or whatever to film them. That's totally illegal. So how can you prove that you didn't do something? You're very, very vulnerable. Guys, it's just simply not worth it. I see So many people commenting online and on other YouTube channels about, you know, how can I get a maid and everything. I'm like, are you nuts? If you not learn anything, do not have a maid or a live-in maid or anything. You lose your freedom, even if they're just a maid. You might, if you're a good employer, they're going to probably start having feelings for you because you're a nice man. And if you start bringing home women, the yaya's going to get, the maid's going to get jealous. Plus the fact, in the vast majority of instances, yayas, maids, etc., they're not loyal. They're to a penny and they come and go. And they all talk together within their community groups and they all make out that they're earning more money than they are. So you might have a great yaya and you for like 3, 4, 5, 6 months. But all of a sudden she wants to leave because she thinks the grass is greener on the other side. And then you've got to go through all of that kind of hiring process again. And lo and behold, when you're walking around your place, you might start realising that stuff's missing. It's just not worth it, guys. It is absolutely not worth it. You are just so vulnerable if you start bringing in strangers into your property, whether it's a condo or a house. It's just not worth it. Don't even bother going there. I did say it was going to be finally, but just one other thing I'd like to mention, because I wanted to mention it on a previous little monologue of mine. I'm sorry if you can hear the thunder outside. There's a storm coming through. Is car batteries and motorcycle batteries. I ride big motorcycles and I've got a car. And in Asia, don't expect your vehicle batteries to last anything more than about a year. The difference in temperature and the humidity, etc., they just cook. They just do not last. And they're quite expensive. So always try and maintain your batteries. Obviously, I'm not preaching here. But with car and motorcycle batteries, just remember that you'll be lucky if you get 12 months life out of them because they're just baked in Asia. They really are. They don't last very long at all. Just thought I'd mention that. I wanted to mention it before I keep on forgetting. Anyhow, I hope you found some of this of interest. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already done so. Most importantly, it's all about viewership. So please watch some of my other videos. I'm trying to put out as much helpful content and information as I possibly can. Some of it may be relevant to your circumstances, some of it might not. But I do try and add in a few little additional tips on all of my videos that might not be related to what's actually on the title. So please do watch some of my videos all the way through, because some people have asked me some questions on some videos and I'm like, well, I talked about that in another video. So do watch some of my own other videos because I'm trying to help you guys out. And if you've got any suggestions on something that you'd like me to talk about, like TRT, for example, which I did for a few of you guys, and schooling as well. If you'd like me to cover a particular topic, or if you've got any suggestions or requests, please drop them in the comments box and I'll be delighted to help where I can. Thank you.